Tonight on Reporting Scotland, with more snow forecast, police say they'll look at improving travel warnings during winter weather. Scotland's Chief Nursing Officer says we must be more honest about our weight. A rule change allows people who are HIV positive to become commercial pilots after a Glasgow man was denied a place on a training scheme. Musicians from all over the world are gathering in Glasgow for the 25th Celtic Connections Festival. And how a community came together to pay their respects at the funeral of a 103-year-old widow who had no family.
She was sitting up there saying, "Oh, what a blooming carry in for just a wee woman like me." She's a gem.
Good evening. Police Scotland's advising motorists to drive with caution, with further snow and freezing conditions expected over the next 24 hours. They say they'll look again at how to improve travel warnings during bad weather. Last night, they advised drivers in the south not to take to the road unless their journey was essential. But in the event, the heavy snow forecast didn't materialise. Stephen Godden reports.
The overnight warnings were dire. But by morning, it was clear southern Scotland's major roads were left largely unscathed. In the Borders, the extra 20 centimetres of snow they were preparing for passed further south than expected. On the M74, scene of overnight gridlock on Tuesday, more severe do not travel warnings helped ensure there was no repeat. A collective sigh of relief, accompanied by a pledge to review the system of alerts.
The process begins with the Met Office, who predict where the bad weather is expected to hit and its likely impact. Based on that information, road operators, councils, the government and ultimately the police decide what advice is given to drivers.
But while the Met Office used different colours to signal increasing danger, from yellow to amber to red, the police measure their concern in stages, from stage 1, normal conditions, through to the most severe stage 4, an instruction to avoid travelling altogether. The Transport Secretary told Good Morning Scotland it could be simpler.
I think you're absolutely right. I think sometimes, although we might understand what that jargon means, it doesn't necessarily communicate into very clear, explicit messages, hence why most of the messaging yesterday was frankly focused on those words, do not travel.
The police say they'll look again at the system, but stress detail is important. So too, they say, is geography.
We don't see these problems up in the Highlands and Islands and the northeast of the country because drivers there generally are used to driving in these conditions, whereas the heavier snow events that we get down in the south of Scotland are less frequent and perhaps drivers don't properly understand how to move about in those conditions.
In Dumfries and Galloway, the area hardest hit by the wintry conditions, mixed views on the information they were given.
They were both essentially saying the same thing. And it just one reinforced the other.
I think we got a little bit of snow in this country and weather warnings come out. I think they've got to be on the safe side, haven't they?
They were saying about how bad it was going to be, but it didn't appear, did it? So I'm not really sure about the warnings.
Where schools were closed again, such as here in the Borders, council staff were working hard to get them ready to reopen tomorrow. That's likely, say officials, but still, weather permitting. Warnings for snow and ice remain in place across large parts of the country until tomorrow morning. Yellow, stage 2. The translation, be aware and travel with caution. Stephen Godden, Reporting Scotland.
The spread of flu in Scotland may have reached its peak. There was a small increase in flu-like illnesses between the first and second weeks of this year, but the rate of change has slowed considerably. That's according to Health Protection Scotland. The number of deaths confirmed to be caused by flu is now back within what would be expected at this time of year. Police Scotland Assistant Chief Constable Bernard Higgins is facing 2 fresh complaints about his conduct. The Police Investigations and Review Commissioner is already conducting 2 investigations into Mr Higgins, who's denied any wrongdoing. One concerns criminal allegations, while the other's probing misconduct claims. But the Scottish Police Authority has now asked the Commissioner to assess fresh anonymous claims, which were initially reported to the watchdog last month. Scotland's former Olympic hammer thrower Chris Black has been suspended from coaching. He's pending the outcome of a Police Scotland investigation into what's described as a welfare issue. UK Athletics is understood to have rescinded Black's licence to coach more than a month ago. The former Scottish record holder won a Commonwealth bronze medal in 1982 and represented Britain at both the Montreal and Moscow Olympics. Scotland's Chief Nursing Officer says we must be more honest and frank about our weight. Fiona McQueen says obesity is being normalised and professionals shouldn't shy away from using the fat word as part of measures to tackle the problem. Lisa Summers reports.
Tackling obesity is a top priority for Scotland's Chief Nursing Officer, and she's making a case for being blunt about it. Be prepared to tell people that they're fat.
I think there's something about the word is a difficult. You don't mention the F word. It is a really difficult word, and so I think a more straightforward conversation about what is a healthy plate of food and what is healthy nutrition, what is a healthy weight, and what is a healthy way of getting about.
Fiona McQueen knows how hard it is to lose weight. She lost 7 stone by changing her eating and exercise habits.
I was expecting people to do things that I wasn't able or prepared to do myself, and the irony of that wasn't lost on me. So I felt it was important for me to practice what I was expecting other people to do.
Tackling obesity is complex, and the Chief Nursing Officer says frank conversations must go hand in hand with other advice about exercise and diet.
65% of us are now overweight or obese. A bit like our waistlines, it's an expanding problem. But if you were told you were fat, would it make you do something about it?
I'm called a wee fat. We're both on a diet now.
I think we lie to ourselves enough without other people lying to us too.
I think it's quite an emotive issue, and I think people need to consider the recipient's feelings.
I would not be offended because it's either true or it's not true, and in my case it's true that I'm overweight, so it wouldn't offend me. But I think some people might be a little bit sensitive because they don't realise or they refuse to accept that they are overweight.
The Chief Nursing Officer also says more must be done to support NHS staff, with research showing obesity in nursing is higher than the general population.
Night shift, day shift mix, it just totally mucks up your a regular routine of eating, so you end up eating day and night.
It's so busy, you don't have time for their own nutrition, and you get your breaks, but quite often the breaks aren't significantly enough, and you don't have time to have good nutrition for and time to eat.
The government is consulting on its strategy about diet and obesity. Feeding into that, perhaps, plans to be more frank about fat. Lisa Summers reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
An HIV-positive man from Glasgow says he's overwhelmed that he'll now be able to train as a commercial pilot after the aviation authorities changed the rules. The man, who wants to remain anonymous, had not been able to take up a training place with EasyJet because his HIV status prevented him from getting the required medical certificate. But today, the UK's aviation regulator said HIV would no longer be a bar. Andrew Black reports from Westminster.
Anthony had a dream to become a commercial airline pilot. EasyJet offered him a place on its training programme, but he couldn't accept because he's HIV positive. Speaking to the BBC anonymously in December, Anthony, not his real name, talked about how it affected him.
It was a dream that I'd had from a very young age, and to be told no, but actually to be told no because of your HIV status was utterly devastating.
The UK Civil Aviation Authority previously said European rules meant Anthony couldn't get the medical certificate needed to become a commercial pilot.
Patrick Grady. You'll be aware of the case of my constituent.
After questions from the SNP's Patrick Grady in the Commons today, Transport Secretary Chris Grayling said the Civil Aviation Authority had done a U-turn.
Today the rules are being changed. Whilst I cannot give a certain outcome to an individual case, this will mean that people who suffer from conditions that have made it difficult for them to become commercial pilots will find it easier to do so as the Civil Aviation Authority, I think, take a more sensible approach on this matter.
The decision was welcomed by campaigners.
It's great news and it's a massive win for people living with HIV in Scotland and across the UK.
We asked them to come up with a temporary solution until the European agency's regulations were changed. The last time regulations around HIV were amended, it took around a 10-year study period. So we didn't want to wait that long.
This move is a stopgap measure. The Civil Aviation Authority says it's working with European regulators for a permanent solution. Following the decision, Anthony tweeted that he was overwhelmed, shocked, elated and humbled, adding, "Let's share the great news and let every HIV-positive aspiring pilot in the UK fly." Anthony now hopes to start his training as soon as he can. Andrew Black, Reporting Scotland, Westminster.
You're watching BBC Reporting Scotland. It's just coming up to 20 to 7. A reminder of tonight's top story. Police say they'll look at improving travel warnings during winter weather after the Transport Minister said warnings should be simplified. And still to come, musicians from all over the world are gathering in Glasgow for the 25th Celtic Connections Festival. Dundee's £80 million V&A Museum is to open its doors in September. It'll be the only branch of the museum in the world outside London and will tell the story of Scottish design as well as showcasing international design. Andrew Anderson reports.
First spoken about a decade ago, building work on the V&A Dundee began nearly 3 years ago. The £80 million Museum of Design will open its doors in 8 months' time on Saturday, the 15th of September.
We think it's a very good time to be opening the museum. We're confident the museum will be ready. It's a time when we can open the museum at the point when students are coming back to the city, the schools are thinking about what they're doing. Our school programme will be very important as part of the museum.
Exactly what's happening within the sloping and curving walls of this museum is for now being kept under wraps. This museum will tell the story of Scottish design in all its forms, from the Forth Bridge to computer games. At its heart will be the Oak Room, designed by Charles Rennie Mackintosh and not seen for 50 years. The story of the world's great ocean-going liners will be told in an opening exhibition.
It covers many types of design disciplines: engineering, fashion, textiles, architecture, painting, but there's an extraordinary wealth of different types of design present within the show.
The building is the centrepiece of a £1 billion regeneration of Dundee's waterfront. So what do they think of it here?
I will definitely go myself to see all the commotion and see if it's as good as what they say it's going to be.
I haven't heard anybody say, "Well, I can't wait till this place opens," or anything really.
There's some bars and restaurants opening as well, so should be good for the local economy. Just hope that, Dundee people come out and use the facilities that are going to be here.
It's hoped the V&A Dundee will attract hundreds of thousands of visitors a year. That would bring a massive economic boost for this city and for Scotland. Andrew Anderson, Reporting Scotland, Dundee.
The Scottish Football Association hopes to move a step closer to making Michael O'Neill the next Scotland manager, following talks with the Northern Irishman today. He's been their preferred candidate since Gordon Strachan's contract wasn't renewed last year. Caradine Idsan is at Hampden for us tonight. Caradine.
Michael O'Neill is the man the Scottish Football Association wants here at Hampden for the next few years, and that prospect, it seems, has moved a significant step closer tonight after face-to-face talks with the former Brecon City and Shamrock Rovers manager. Now, not much has leaked out of those discussions, but I'm told that it was a productive discussion. They spoke at length about the job and about football in Scotland. Michael O'Neill was very well prepared, I'm told, and apparently impressed the Scottish FA delegation. Both parties will now go away to reflect on the meeting. There's no set timeline in terms of the next step. Now, they're trying to make Michael O'Neill the highest paid Scottish manager in history. The problem, or potential problem, could be that he's already been offered a lucrative new contract as Northern Ireland manager after qualifying for Euro 2016 and very nearly making the World Cup finals in Russia. So he's very much a wanted man, but it seems that the talks have gone well, and it may well be that the Scottish Football Association will try to offer a big financial bonus to Michael O'Neill to see if he can possibly qualify Scotland for the next tournament, which is the Euro 2020 Championships. Remember, Scotland haven't been to a major football tournament in more than 20 years. Scotland, the SFA, want Michael O'Neill to lead them there, and it seems, according to today's meeting, that Michael O'Neill might be warming to the idea of that challenge. Sally.
We'll see. Thank you very much, Karidina San. Celtic Connections begins in Glasgow tonight. The annual festival began in 1994 with just one venue, the Glasgow Royal Concert Hall, from where our arts correspondent Pauline McLean joins us this evening. Pauline.
Sally, absolutely. This was the only venue in 1994. In fact, the whole festival was built around Glasgow Royal Concert Hall in a way of building up its audiences and boosting the economy at a notoriously quiet time of year. There were a lot of people who wondered whether this could work, a lot of cynics out there. Why would anyone want to come to Glasgow in the middle of winter to listen to traditional music in a concert hall? But it turned out that they did, because this is now one of 28 different venues around Glasgow, staging more than 300 Celtic Connections events.
For a traditional musician, there's only one place to be in January: Glasgow and the annual Celtic Connections Festival. This band, Vare, made their debut there in 2012, and they're headed back there shortly.
For bands like us, it's like being in the centre of the folk universe. Lots of people get to see and hear you. It's really the first step towards getting gigs and festivals outside Shetland.
And they're not alone. Although 25 years ago, when the festival first began, there were those who doubted the combination of Celtic music, cold weather and concert hall.
I have to say, when we got the phone call to come here in the first, I did think they were nuts. I mean, I'm saying a festival in the middle of the January in the wet, rainy, cold climate. I said, who's ever think that would work? But you know what? I guess if you build it, they will come.
But come they did. Thousands of musicians from around the world. One venue expanded to 28, including the Hydro, which will stage the follow-up to this groundbreaking concert. Celtic music, but also classical, jazz and hip-hop.
I feel the festival is very much more about connections now than it is the word Celtic. But also the fact is that the more you dig into other ethnic cultures and music from around the world and other traditions, and it's so close to our own traditions, and you know, the Celts have left a resounding kind of legacy, if you like, from hundreds of years of music making.
And it's not just about the music. For performers and audiences, it's as much about the social connections.
It's the social, and it's the music, and it's everything's come together for a big party. It's a big party in the middle of January, so we'll be back anytime they ask.
And this big party gets underway. Shortly. In just over half an hour, the opening concert takes place, and we've arranged to give you a little taster of it.
Ah, fantastic. Thanks to Pauline McLean for that. Widow Annie Wallace died just before Christmas at the age of 103. She had no family, but today around 100 people joined soldiers, firefighters and politicians at her funeral. The remarkable show of community spirit came after the local minister in the Milton area of Glasgow launched an appeal to honour her. Aileen Clark reports.
With her casket carried into church by soldiers from the local TA regiment, Annie Wallace may have outlived her husband, her brother and her niece, but she had plenty company today and she was fondly remembered.
But first meeting her when she was already 94, she reminded me of a wee bird. Her stock response when I'd visit and ask how she was, that she was hinging together, and then she'd tell me how well she was looked after by the girls. She never seemed to get down. She was always cheerful.
Annie had lived all her 103 years in Milton and other areas in the north of Glasgow, and she enjoyed working as a shop assistant there, as she recalled a few years ago.
And my mother thought if I was getting a job, she'd like me to get into an office. So I met a better type of people there, you know. I landed in a shop. I says, what's it? Because you get more excitement in a shop.
Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me.
Some hearty singing at the service, fitting for a lady who loved singing these hymns herself. As people from across the community, some who knew her, many who didn't, answered the call to properly mark the passing of one of their oldest residents.
And she was just amazing. She really was. She just lit up your soul. She's just a joy to be with, a pleasure.
I think she'd have enjoyed it very much. It was just her down to a T.
I didn't know her personally, but I wish I'd known her personally. So it's been a great day,
She was sitting up there saying, oh, what a blooming carry on for just a wee woman like me. She's a gem.
Annie was a member of this church, but the minister's Facebook post announcing her death quickly reached so much wider.
I think it does prove Milton's a good place. I've always felt it is a good place to be. Annie was proud of this place. People who stay here look out for one another, and they did today. They did today in a good style. For Annie was 103 when she died, and I have absolutely not a shred of doubt that she is in heaven, whatever heaven looks like, forever young, forever her beautiful, gentle, fun, positive self. And all of us here are the better for having known her.
Aileen Clark, reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
What a lovely story. Timeline is over on BBC Two at 7:30. Shireen Glenn can tell us what's coming up.
Tonight, what more can we all do to reduce plastic waste, and are the supermarkets doing enough?
We'll also be getting top tips for winter driving, and as Celtic Connections begins, the American band Red Tail Ring will perform live.
Plus, from electrician to Jacobite warrior, all thanks to the tourism boom from the hit show Outlander.
That's Timeline, 7:30, BBC Two.
But in the meantime, here's Chris with the weather.
Sally, thank you. Hello there, good evening to you. Well, we've had a wintry spell of weather so far this week, and that theme continues. We still have a Met Office yellow be aware warning in force for the risk of snow showers and ice, and that's in force until Friday night. Now, tonight, you can see we still have this westerly wind driving in showers. On the coast, there'll be rain or sleet, but inland falling as snow. Further east and northeast, dry, cold and frosty. Icy in places, temperatures well below freezing, and in the countryside where there's snow on the ground, -6 or -7. Now tomorrow, little in the way of change. Those westerly winds driving in showers, and they will be snow to all levels, but they are showers, not everyone's going to see them. However, if you get a heavy one or 2, 3, 4 in a row, you could well see some disruption on the roads, particularly through the central belt tomorrow morning and for the afternoon. And across southern Scotland tomorrow afternoon, another spell of heavy snow showers. Coupled with strengthening winds, we could see some temporary blizzard conditions on higher roads, higher parts of the M74. Out with the showers, some sunshine, the best of it over towards the eastern borders, up towards Angus, Aberdeenshire and Murray. And in the sunshine, quite a pleasant afternoon, although it will be windy and it will be cold in that wind. Further west and northwest, a rash of showers. For the far north and the Northern Isles, most of those showers, rain or sleet at low levels, snow on the hills. But elsewhere, inland across the mainland, that snow is likely to all levels. And then Friday night, a further spell of wintry showers to come, but change of foot as we head through towards the weekend. Here's Saturday, and it gets soft to a showery start in places, particularly in the northwest, but fairly light showers. Elsewhere, dry and bright, and by the afternoon, far fewer showers. So a pleasant, sunny, but cold afternoon to come on Saturday. A decent start, though, to the weekend, and plenty of opportunity to get out and about. Change on the way, though, for Sunday. A weather front moving in off the Atlantic. As that rain meets the cold air, it will be falling as snow. A significant spell first thing Sunday morning, but mild air following on behind, turning that back to rain, and it will be a soggy afternoon there on in. That's the forecast for now.
Thanks very much, Chris. I'll be back with the headlines at 8 and the late bulletin just after the 10 o'clock news. Until then, have a good evening. Bye-bye.